Casey Stern is the host of the Unfiltered Podcast, and you trust him as a baseball expert and a very experienced longtime baseball reporter and insider. Joined us a couple of times last year, including in their historic run through the playoffs and ultimately the World Series championship. And we loved it. So we're excited to get him back here before the season even starts this time around. Casey, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us here on your Home of the Champs.
What's up, boys? Always good to be with you. How we doing, okay?
Yeah, we're doing great. You know, it's been the best offseason we've ever had. It was the best spring training we ever went to. And now Langford made the opening day roster, brother. Tell us about your expectations.
Yeah, I mean, look, when I look at this team, I think it is, you got to remember, extremely difficult to repeat in this sport. Even when the Giants were at their height with Bruce Bochy, it was every other year. And, you know, we came up with all these excuses. One year was the Showtime show, and then it was innings with Bumgarner and the rest of the rotation. And the difficulty is it's the longest of seasons, and it is very, very difficult. It's where depth really plays in. And what I love about the Ranger team is they got a lot of youth. A lot of times when you get to the top of the mountain and you talk about a champion in this sport, the reason they can't repeat is because they're old. So there's too many innings on all the arms, and a lot of those guys can't sustain because they've had their best year in their penultimate, and now they're going down the other way. You've got guys who have not even seen full seasons, have not seen their best, and I think that certainly is going to be beneficial. What I'd love to see, and I still hold out hope, even though knowing it's not going to happen, a Monty return, I would have loved to see that. No offense, and nothing against Michael Lorenzen, but I think, you know, Lorenzen's a great example of a guy sometimes when you rob too much of Peter to pay Paul with guys who are from the bullpen who move into starting rotations. Look at last year with the Phillies, first half, right, all-star, first start with the Phillies, brilliant, throws a no-no afterwards, and then after that, the ERA was somewhere around 8 down the stretch, and he ends up going out of the rotation into the bullpen. I'd love to see another starter, but I like the way the roster.
Is Jordan Montgomery for sure done? You know, do you think he's just...
Yeah. To me, you never could believe any of this stuff because, you know, JD Martinez yesterday with the Mets is a great example. You know, he and Scott Morris agent, they were looking for $20 million at one point, and then they end up coming back to a deal and it's $12 million. But for those who have not seen how this is playing out, it's $4.5 million this year, and then between 2034 and 2038, we divvy up the rest of it. So it's barely anything on the books now. If that's the kind of deal that happens, it puts, I think, the Rangers and the Yankees both in play for a couple of different reunions because neither one of those teams want to put money on the books and money on the tax. But if you can come up with some creative way to do it, bring an opt-out back after this year, make it a one-year deal where he goes back out to free agency, I think that's something that's worth doing. The difference is between Snell and Montgomery is I think Snell was a little bit more confident with the opt-outs of what he could do at $31 million for AAV this year and then build off of, where Montgomery, I think, is trying to take advantage of his one opportunity maybe to get that one big deal. It could be Boston, could be the Angels. I'd love to see the Rangers or the Yankees. I think both make the most sense.
Man, we would love to get Monty back. As you look at the AL West and what was such a tight race last year with the Astros, Mariners, and the Rangers, how do you see it as we are just under a week away from opening day now?
Yeah, to me, it's the battle of Texas. I look at these two teams, and they're too deep. And the other part is that I don't think we look at enough is it always seems to come down in this sport when it's close and tight and races to what you do with the deadline, because you've got the ability to then go ahead and assess the territory and push that pedal. And I always, years ago, came up with this thing, prospects are cool, parades are cooler. The teams that go for the parades get after it. And we saw what happened with both of these teams last year when you get into that deadline territory where they're willing to move. And no offense to Jerry Dipoto and, you know, some of these other guys who are willing to make trades every other day. But when the Astros make these deals, they matter. You look at what they've done down the stretch in a lot of these seasons, they're always willing to do that. I think Texas the same way with CY in that group. I think it's a two-horse race, and I think it's going to come down to health. And I'm saying this again, you go to the Verlander injury as an example, right, and how he's starting the season. The youth is on the side of the Rangers in a lot of different spots, and I think that's going to play to their benefit as the season rolls on.
Casey, where do you even start with what's going on with the Dodgers right now?
Yeah.
I mean, how do you even, I mean, a guy like yourself that's just so involved with baseball, how do you even get your arms around this?
Here's the thing. And yeah, obviously, specifically, we're talking about the Ohtani situation.
Yes, sir.
We all love Shohei Otani. Nobody wants him, and I don't care what team you root for. We all love the guy and know what he is for the sport. Because of that, you're seeing the way people are handling it as, oh, well, Ohtani didn't do anything. There's nothing to worry about with him. Let's just worry about the games that are being played in the Soul Series, and it must have been the translator. But if you take that away and you look at this honestly, the common sense of it tells you something does not hold water, to use the term my cousin Vinny. And a lot of it has to do with the changing of the stories. Do I think that Ohtani gambled all that money? I don't. But I think what played out is exactly probably where the truth lies. If you go back in this story, and for 48 hours, guys, both sides, and I'm talking about the interpreter and Ohtani, who were on the same side at the time. Remember, that's his best friend, his confidant here in the States. They're both going to ESPN and reporting the following. A lot of gambling debt, gambling addiction, very, very apologetic and sorry. Here's the friend in Ohtani who says, I'm not going to lend you the money because you could gamble with it. I'll go ahead and I'll pay it off. So my name's on the books for $4.5 million. And that's where both sides were in all, and it says it in all the reports, in all the conversations. Then what happened? Well, according to them, and I say according to them in quotes, there was a meeting after the game in the Soul Series where then it was an apology from the translator who basically said, hey, this guy had to leave. He's got the big gambling addiction. And it wasn't until that time that Shohei Otani understood, quote, the facts and the breadth of what had gone on. I'm not buying that. What I think is Shohei Otani is as good a guy as we think and he seems to be. He probably backed up his buddy and said, hey, look, you got a problem, but I'll hook you up because $4.5 million to me is basically like $6.
Sure.
So I'll take care of it. And then when it came to his people finding out and realizing that it's not about gambling on baseball, you can't gamble in California. It's illegal. And your names are on the books and it's illegality that's now involved. And it's a big problem. Well, now you got to be Jack and Rose on the raft in Titanic. And basically that translator about to be Jack and he about to drown because I got to separate from you. So how this plays out, I don't know. But I think clearly the deviation in the story, in my opinion, common sense wise, tells you it comes from the people around Ohtani realizing how serious a scenario this is to have his name attached to those.
Do you think those people panicked? I mean, like you're placing wagers. That's a slap on the wrist. I don't think baseball really wants to come after you like for paying off somebody's debt. I think they made it worse on themselves.
I'm with you. I don't know if necessarily. I think optically it looks worse. I mean, court of public opinion, because the idea that look, Ohtani, you can't. And I understand it's baseball, acumen that gets an athlete like that here, but he seems like a very smart individual. You can't be what I would consider to be that dumb and naive to be going through all this process and not understand till after a team meeting where, by the way, the translator is then talking to baseball players. So it's not even as in confidence as he would talk to Ohtani. So in that conversation, for me to believe that Ohtani then suddenly realized, oh my gosh, this is a serious situation. And he said, I'm just not buying that. And I think that he's kind of got caught with the pants down a little bit here, but he can definitely sell out the translator who, again, it's not a great situation, but now it's him in the crosshairs and not Ohtani. The one thing I'll say on this, which is a big deal, is that Major League Baseball, if you look at the ESPN report, came out and said they're going to gather facts. They're still gathering facts on what happened with the baseball that they changed voluntarily 3-4 years ago, and they act like somebody went in the warehouse and switched them all. They're still gathering facts on why I got to sit there and have a magnifying glass to read the back of jerseys and names on there. They're going to be gathering facts forever because they don't want to find any facts that tell you that Ohtani did anything wrong. Do I think he gambled to a high level? No. Do I think it's exactly as it played out? He probably covered his buddy's back and now is backtracking? It seems to be that.
Casey Stern, host of the Unfiltered Podcast, here with you on 105.3 The Fan. Thank you for that insight and perspective. Rangers pitching staff, and I'm going to throw a lot of names at you, but what do we expect from Michael Lorenzen, and what do we get in the middle of the season with Scherzer, deGrom, and Malley?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the Lorenzen piece, you would hope that he's a depth piece. I mean, I hate saying this, but you do not want him to be a viable option for you when you're heading down the stretch into the postseason and playing meaningful games, because that means something went wrong with the horses in deGrom and Scherzer that you need out there. The X factor, and this is nothing against Max and his age. deGrom is the X factor in all of this. What to expect, I have no idea, because I followed him in New York and covered that and was around a guy who, when he was pitching on the mound, they made you the best team in the game. But then you had no idea how many more starts you were going to get out of him. And it's not because he doesn't care. You saw how much he cares. I think the people in Texas how much he cares when he went down last year and how emotional he was. He wants to be there. He's been a great teammate. But I think to me, that health, that's an X factor. The unfortunate part is it has to be kind of, I think, to me, cherry on the pie or icing on the cake. It can't be the cake. The Rangers have to almost act like we're going to get something out of Scherzer, and we have no idea what we're going to get at deGrom. Because I think that's kind of where you got to lie. And with deGrom, if he gives you more, you're all of a sudden the best team in baseball every 5 days, and you may be close to that best team even within those other days because of the impact he's going to have on that team. He's that good. He's the best pitcher in the game when he's healthy.
Casey, our big talking point last year was the Rangers bullpen. Ultimately winning the World Series defied the odds with how poor that bullpen was. Do you think they made enough additions with Kirby Yates and David Robertson, maybe some of the guys that they have in the minors, to be able to make that an improved staff?
Yeah, I think they, especially with the D-Rob scenario, I think they've got more consistent, reliable options, and that's where seemingly there were a lot of issues down the stretch where, I mean, look, going even into the postseason, I wasn't breathing and holding my breath for Ranger fans every time Aroldis Chapman got warmed up. So, I think they've got more reliable options. I think it's going to be a wait and see. Look, the one thing I could say about bullpens that I don't think we realize enough in this sport is how many bullpens do you have that are locked down that you trust right now heading into opening day around this sport? Sure. There aren't many. There are teams with good closers who don't have setup guys, or lefty and a righty, but you don't know which one's going to close, or it's a mishmash all over the board. They've got some time, and these are kind of the times where you can work in some of your guys who are younger, see what you have, and then as you get to the deadline, relievers are the easiest thing to find. But I think they've got more reliable options, at least heading into this season comparatively to a year.
Okay, so just looking at this Keith Meister Tommy John surgery, I wanted to circle back on deGrom. What are you hearing about this? It's like a reinforced version of it. We had the story in the morning news a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, man, should this give us confidence that maybe deGrom could be fixed for good for a while? Or do you think the other injury concerns are, with the rest of his body, still leave you in like a high alert mode or a danger zone for injured players?
Yeah, to me, where I go, clearly, I'm not a doctor, but and I didn't stay in a Holiday Inn Express last night either, so I don't feel like one. But I will say this. That I think that, we always see with these injuries, the overcompensating when there is one issue with other parts of the arm and the body. Anytime anybody has any shoulder issues, that's always to me a red flag of everything else, that no matter what goes on with Tommy John. I've read it too, and I'm sitting there same as you, and I'm hopeful that it means he's in a better situation. But the truth is, you're not going to know until you air it out. And when we talk about airing it out, he airing it out at 99, 100, 101 and letting it go. Until that happens, it's no different in a lot of respects than somebody who could tell you they did everything that you want to come back from a torn ACL, Achilles, or any injury like that. And until you go run in the gap in left center field and go after a ball and really let it go, you could simulate everything you want left and right. But I think we'll get good reports, and I think they will continue to be good, hopefully, fingers crossed. But not until he gets back to a big league mound and really airs it out, are we going to find out whether or not this is going to hold.
Casey, this with Chris Young and him winning the World Series, winning the championship, are we going to have a day where we see more players become general managers that teams go to instead of maybe the baseball lifer, the guy who's come up through the scouting staff and the departments and all that? Are we going to see maybe more players get these opportunities to be general managers?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, we've got, a lot of backup catchers that have become managers, including one who's sitting there with you, and that was, all the rage all over the place with the Girardis and how many other guys. And then you get the clubhouse guys who become managers. And when it comes to the GMs, especially today with the analytics, you've got a lot of guys who have worked in front offices and been farm directors and then sat there and are analytical minded, the David Stearns of the world, for example, in New York. Andrew Friedman, of course, in Los Angeles with the Dodgers. But I do think there's a lot of value. For me, anytime you could cross over, I'll give you an example. One of the reasons why Craig Counsell is one of the best managers in baseball is that people don't realize not only was he a great clubhouse guy, but when he went into the Brewers system, he was a guy who was helping run their farm and working in drafting and developing and dealing with younger players. So he got that vantage point when he came off the field and then brought it into the dugout. Chris Young bringing it from the field, right, then into the front office and now GMing. I think it's a great question. I do think there should be more of that. The only part of why I hesitate to say that the answer is yes is everything is so based on analytics now that even though these guys could say, hey, I can get an analytics team, a lot of times players are seen as guys who are more of the eye test kind of folks. So I think it's being changed with the Craig Breslows, who's another one in Boston, with the Chris Youngs, a lot of very smart people who played, who are getting into the front office. And I do think it could change the perception and make it more of a reality moving forward.
Casey, speaking of the eye test, I'm going to play you some sound here of some analysis of a current Ranger. I want to play a little quiz with you. Name that Ranger, okay?
Okay.
So here is the sound.
You know, what he's got working there between the knee and the waist is pretty impressive.
That's your only hint there. Can you name that Texas Ranger?
Somebody's. I feel like there are so many connotations that could go wrong with whatever the answer is to this.
I have
Is
no
it
idea.
relating to a swing? I would imagine. Are we talking about hips here? I don't know. Every answer's got to come down to being, for me, I'll go after last year's Corey Seager.
Okay, it's a fair guess. It's a fair guess. That is not the correct answer, but we'll continue to play this with you until you get it correct over the course of the baseball season.
Okay, fair enough.
Might
Fair
want to
enough.
go into that
That
clubhouse.
was a rough start, but
it's all right.
You're saying it's a good answer because it's an actual player on the team. Like, was I close? Or
Yes,
was I not
you were close.
Or, like, okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It is an actual player.
Okay, fair enough.
And, sir, did you say that with the Montgomery thing that a deferred compensation deal is available if you want him, and it would only count 4.5 on the books?
No, well, I don't know that he's going to accept that. I mean,
Okay.
look, it's like JD Martinez wasn't going to accept anything less than 20 million. They took it 12, and with a deferral at 4.5.
I like it.
Montgomery's trying to cash in.
Yeah.
I don't know why this deal hasn't taken place, other than the fact that I think the teams that have been in on him, he doesn't want to play for necessarily. There have been ties to Boston. The Angels seemingly have money, but with Snell off the books, there shouldn't be anything blocking him at this point. Personally, I think he would like to, and who wouldn't, go back to Texas. And I don't think that they've wanted to budge to whatever the number is. And I think he'd have interest in going back to the Yankees. And they have not wanted to put money in the books for the tax. But now you're already seeing guys, look, Blake Snell can't start on time, wants to be ready opening week. JD Martinez is starting in the minors, told the Mets when they signed him, no problem, I'll start down there and get ready. You're not even going to have, wherever Montgomery goes, you're not going to have money right now, no matter what he's simulated to start the season. So the clock's ticking, but the more it ticks, the more it favors the teams, because the player knows he has got to accept something and get on the field.
I love it, Casey. Great stuff. We look forward to your coverage in the Unfiltered podcast all season long.
Anytime, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, brother.
The best.
Wow, yeah, great resource for you. Love his sports takes and his insights. And we salute Casey, and we'll get him on throughout the season. Stay tuned.